Welcome to the next episode of the Change Troubleshooter podcast. And today it's my great pleasure to have Susana Paiva as my guest. And we're going to talk about changing mindsets on being a change maker. Hi, Susana. Welcome.
Hello, Nina. Thank you for the invitation.
It's my
I'm glad
pleasure.
to be here.
It is so nice to have Susana here, because when I asked her how I should introduce her, the list of things that she can be is endless. So, mechanical engineer, which is how I met you, and you were assigned to working on a PLM program of change. But before that, you had written international publications on climate change. And since working with you on the PLM program, you have done lots of voluntary projects and programs. You have an online store, which I'm dying to know more about. You are a creative artist, and you're a poet, and you're a mum, you're a wife, you are so many things. Susana, it's so amazing. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for introducing me like this. It's endless, really. I enjoy live, and I am always open to good opportunities. So that's how I transform myself with so many things at the same time.
It's very inspiring, as we'll find out more. And today you are in Rio. Not just today, you live in Rio in Brazil. And as I woke up this morning to the news that you don't have a president, there's no decision yet. So we don't know still whether it's going to be Bolsonaro or Lula. And the country itself continues to go through huge change. And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, apprehensive and tiring, because we did a huge effort to not having a second term. But I think it's still with the democracy to decide. I think we need more people going to vote, to exercise their rights, to have a decision. Otherwise, other people will have for you, right? So we still need to wait more 2 weeks for decision. And I hope we have a change on that.
And it's mandatory to vote in Brazil. So you have no choice. You have to go and vote, which is very different to here in the UK.
Yeah, actually, it is like this. But if you don't go to vote, you just pay a small tax and justify, right? So 20% of absence, it's too much, right? In a country where you are obligated to vote. Obligate, right? Exactly. But yes, 20% what we got yesterday.
No, that's interesting itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone seems divided. And I think you mentioned to me that neither of the top two candidates are really who everybody would really like, but the decision now is the best of the worst.
Yes, kind of, right? Both have a high rejection, so makes things more in a difficult decision for. It's not reflects really the population because of this rejection, and makes things more critical on decisions in the other chairs behind the Senado and the Congress, right? Where people are going to lead with those people behind them. So it's all about fights, and at the streets, the sensation is not secure, because you feel you can be aggressive, or maybe you cannot, right, talk in a healthy way about your thoughts and politicals. It's always coming to a fight.
Oh, and the same the world over, it seems. I think most countries find themselves in this situation now where we're communities that are divided, and it is not, as you describe, it's not easy to talk about our differences anymore. Some people find that very difficult, and the situation can be very aggressive very quickly. And it means that our skills as change makers become much more important. And that
Yeah.
and that brings me to where I want to start this conversation, because when I met you, Susana, it was so clear that you were a change maker. I mean, immediately I thought you were a change maker, a very natural change maker who was so curious about what was going on, had ideas that you had formulated for many different things that you'd seen, and you were clear about what needed to happen and how you could contribute to that change taking place. But the difficulty was getting other people on board to see it in that way. And we both struggled with that. I mean, PLM projects are notorious for this anyway, but we both struggled because the environment we were in was very polarized, and some people did really support the change and some people really did not support the change, very much like the political agenda we've just been talking about.
Yes, interesting. Yeah, you're right. We couldn't um, promote the discussions without having a fight, right? We could just with a few people, I had good conversations, and we could really have some draws, and but this was just with one and another. In general, we couldn't really have a space for a construction and a discussion of the map we were about to go, right? So yes, it was a difficult time.
Yeah,
And
very difficult. And as we were trying to push through that, and I think in some ways actually making progress, I think sometimes that progress was coming because of our tenacity and continuing to say the same thing over and over again, in a way hoping that people would see the situation differently. Then of course we were all hit with the pandemic, and life changed quite dramatically for all of us working on those change programs. And
yeah,
although we were all used to working remotely, it was more than that, wasn't it? There were different decisions to be made, and suddenly the importance of getting a PLM program delivered faded away, and there were other issues that were much more important: keeping people in jobs, making more strategic business decisions on how we were going to continue through this very difficult time. And for you, this transition, as awful as it was, opened up a massive opportunity for you to be that change maker that you naturally are. So you tell us about what happened here.
yeah. I was about to go again to UK, right? And I was planning to go to Bristol as well to continue my job with PLM and the team. I met amazing people in there, people speaking my language about the product life cycle management. But in March, my trip was not being approved, and I was waiting for it. And in December, we start to see this disease called COVID, this infection taking all around in China. And at that time in Brazil, some people were saying that this was a creation, an invention, and a fake thing, fake news from China, because, and all that thing. And well, COVID came, bringing deaths all around in Europe, then in United States. And at some point in the TV, I would say, oh my God, how about how will this hit Brazil, right? When it was coming to the United States and in Vegas, they were organizing people to sleep in a parking lot. And I say, and I started to cry at the time. And I said, how it go, how it be with Brazilian people, poor people, and because we didn't take action at anywhere, any place. And the president was like, well, this is people are powering up this gravity. This is not serious, saying things like that, right? And when we were about 5,000 deaths, a reporter asked him, how about the deaths in Manaus, where we had the greatest number of people dying? And he said, I'm not a grave digger. So don't ask me, I'm not a grave digger. And I said, at this time, I was participating in a group, commercial women's group. I'm not for commercial, but I was there. I don't remember how I was included in that, but maybe because of my relation with this women's network. And I liked it because they used to have good discussions in there. And then a girl came up with a project in Florianopolis. And she said she was asking help and donations for her project. And I started to read that, and I said, well, I want to do this in Rio as well. So I can donate for you, but can I be part of it? Can we do like something like a Respira Rio, which means Rio take a breath, or Rio breath. And then I said, well, yes. And I started to put some meetings on. And I said her, I don't know how I'll do that, because this seems to be very, will take much of my time. I don't know if I have the time, but I want to do this. This makes sense. This needs to be done in Brazil, because there is no action from nothing in the government, nothing for health, for not even giving masks to people at the street, not organizing people in the park lot, which is an absurd, but not even that. And then I started to speak to her and collect everything I needed and talk to my friends about it. And at this point, people started to come to help, right? And I got 3 friends working with me in the organization, seeing looking for organizations to donate, searching for people to give donations, interviewing and finding the dressmakers to work with the project. And we were paying to that people, right, to the dressmakers who they were unemployed at this time, and donating the masks. So it was a double help to unemployed people and people without money to buy masks or to protect themselves.
So the project was to make face masks, wasn't it?
Was, yes, to make face masks and to pay for the unemployed dressmakers.
Because the problems in Brazil, I mean, and this wasn't just Brazil, but here the problem in Brazil was that the government wasn't supporting anything, because as far as the government was concerned, there wasn't really a problem in Brazil. And because they didn't acknowledge the problem, people had no money, they had no work. And for those of you who have not visited Brazil, Brazil is a country of extremes, isn't it? You don't have to go anywhere special to see the poverty that exists. It's very close. Wherever you are, you can see that people live in hardship. So when something like this happens, there's no safety net for them. They really have very little, and then they go to having absolutely nothing with nobody to help them. So your project not only with looking at something like a face mask, which is what around the world people were being encouraged to do, but the importance of your project was that people got some money as part of the process. And that's what made this so special, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Money was coming, and I was not, I was thinking about this, how to get money from them. And then we started to create some good communication Instagram content, right? Is explaining how this project would be, explaining how we would help families, not only the mask with the mask, but also with the employment, because we were paying to these dressmakers to feed their families, right? Most of them were women responsible for the whole family, right? We had interviewed them just to make sure they were the target we were looking for. So we had in total 8 dressmakers working to this project. And there is a fun fact in this in these terms of dressmaker, because I was cutting the tissues myself with my scissors, my home scissors, and was giving my pain my fingers. And I said, well, maybe we can find someone to borrow us the cutter, right? A tissue cutter. And my friend, well, I know a guy that maybe he can borrow us this cutter. Ah, okay, let me introduce me to him. And then I go and pick this cutter at his house. And I went there, and then we started to talk, knowing each other. And he said, please take care like a baby of this cutter. I bought this to work in carnival dresses. And yes, and we were near to the carnival, and these people was not working at all, right? And then I said, oh, well, so if you work with carnival, you are not working right now, right? Yes, I'm not working, and I don't have a job right now, right? Or any earns. And then I say, well, so stop, keep your cut, and we will be, you are now working for the project. And I say, and he said, well, thank you very much. And I said, no, I don't want your cut. Please cut the tissues. And I started to bring all these tissues to him, and he helped a lot. It was more than 1 year this project runs, and we made something like 8,000 masks, donating around our neighborhoods, right? More near to where I live in Rio. Rio is too big, but was a huge difference for those who were in this net, right? In this network and at the streets. And yeah, it was good and was relieving, was like a lifeboat for me. I turn off the TV and start to act on some change, even being small, looking to the size of our country, the size of our city, even it was important, the right thing to do. And it was clear, was easy to make this clear for people who was donating, for people who were making themselves available to communicate, to create contents for Instagram, to interview people, to receive, to leave and take the masks around. So it was a great, successful project. I have a good memory of that. I think for my whole life, I remember that.
And people will remember you for their whole lives because of the impact that you made. And when we look back now to the situation where you were struggling to make that impact in a workplace with something as simple really as a PLM program, but then outside of that, the comparisons that we can draw that are, I think, useful for people listening, that you saw a need, which we do so often. And instead of just saying, oh, somebody needs to do something here, you decided you could do something. So what was that switch? What changed from you being somebody who watched what was happening and saying somebody needs to do something? Instead, you thought, I need to do something. What was your motivation there?
Yeah, we are a small representation of everything that is around us, right? So we must feel responsible for the things that happens near us and not think this is too small because you're part of this. So if you think that is small, it's because you are small too. So we need to understand our part in the job, our part in the life with a neighborhood. So that will be a real change you can do if you believe, if you understand that, not believe, it's not a matter of belief, but understand you're part of that. So for COVID was easier because was making sense. So everybody was in the same boat, right? Everybody could have COVID, poor, rich. So it was easy to have them that mindset, right? So today I know this donations and all everything that suddenly happens. I was not thinking about how, but suddenly everything went perfectly because people were sure that they were part of that, not marrying how poor or how rich and where the position they were, if inside the buildings or in homes or at street, you were, um, uh, like I say, you could get COVID, right? And at the work is the same, but we build the silos, right? We build the things, well, I am this, I am that. So we fail to think about organization like a whole thing. And PLM is a whole thing, right? Because it's the product, is how fast and how connected you deliver product, right? How could we manage this to get the best of it? And this is the same thing in a work day, right? You are there, you are part of that, and you need to do the change so you have the overall change, right? And change is for your benefit, but not always for your benefit, but the benefit of the product, the benefit for the company, right? To do this faster, to do this lean, right? So it's all about having people understanding they are part of it, understanding that they are responsible for that whole thing, being part of it, right?
And you think that when it comes to work, these silos make it easy for people to say, I have another choice here. When everyone was looking at COVID, like you say, everyone knew they could get COVID. There was nothing. Your choice was to try and protect yourself from getting it, or hope that if you do get it, you were healthy enough to survive it. When we're at work, there seems to be endless choices that people feel that they can have. So when we talk about something like a PLM program, where we're focused on an end game, where we say, as a result of this PLM program, then everything to do with the product, the design, the strategy, the sales process, even the materials that get supplied, the whole chain of events can run more efficiently if we work in this way. But somebody can always say, but I have another idea. If we did this instead, this piece here would work better. And so at work, it feels to me that we give people too many opportunities to choose at an individual level or a team level or a silo level. And that means the whole thing is never as efficient, because it has to be one group. In your project, you managed to get one group of people, and you did that by great communication, great content, and that one group of people came together under one vision, motivated by the same goal. But at work, we don't always achieve that, do we?
Not always, not always really. And that's why it's needed you to draw and to give vision of the thing in a bigger picture. So it's always good starting saying them what that change impacts at the end, right? Because especially at technical roles, right, people tends to be more analytic and take and see and right, be more attention to details and to not only silos, but because even inside their silos, they are focused in their share, right? So this is not bad at all. This is important to business to run and to make things, but we also need them to sometimes put the head out of the silo and see what is going on, what's going on around. Because if you don't do that, maybe it's coming an avalanche, a wave, or something, and will keep you in a surprise, right? So it's important, as leading this PLM, always giving to users and to people the importance of their job in the chain, right? In the whole change, in the product, in the final delivery. So, because it has to make sense in their heads, so they feel responsibility for it. So I have great response when I do that, great results when I do that. But of course, you need to manage time and and the thing you're gonna do, right? This takes time, right? So I think it's important also to say that. Tell the whole story, make people aware of this chain takes time. Explain their part takes time. But if it makes sense for everyone, it's easier to make changes.
And your experience now, if I met you, you're about to go to Newcastle again in towards the end of the month, and if this was the first time that we were going to meet each other, would you describe yourself as a change maker now because of the experience that you've been through?
Yes, I am a change maker in life, Nina. I just an example, right? My life, right, turned in 360 degrees and I got married and I was waiting for adoption. So this happened. We don't know when we adopt in Brazil when this child will come. So I was waiting, or not waiting because it's too long, 5.5 years, almost 6 years waiting. So I was not expecting to have a baby at that time, and I couldn't calculate when it would come. So the planning was zero, right? But I was open to the change. And then I met Felipe, my husband now, right? And we decided to marry. And 10 days after that, before our marriage, the child came. And this was a real good and bad change, right? Because I was not prepared. I was really confused about everything. So this is now 1 year from when this started in October last year, and I'm still dealing with that change so big. But this is a great opportunity to learn more also. And I am change maker in everything I do. That's what I want to say with that. I am open to changes because I believe changes take us to challenges, to new and great results, right? If you don't dare to take risks, if you don't dare to look for new things, you keep your life always in the same level, same steps. And for me, this is tiring. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it's a good reminder to everybody, isn't it, that if you feel that your life has stopped and that you are not making progress and you don't have the choices that other people around you have, that's probably because you've stopped being open to change. And this
Exactly.
is inside work and outside work. And sometimes, as you've proved, even when it seems hard to influence change, maybe inside work, you can influence change outside work. Being a change maker is in you, isn't it? It's something that you control in you. And the different environments that we put ourselves in just test that all the time. And that test and that challenge is part of the way that we grow as human beings.
Yes, I agree 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, in the couple of years of not being in touch with you, really, you have helped no end of people through probably one of the hardest periods of their lives. And you have done that, organized it, been part of it, been making decisions, learning new things. You've become a mother and you've become a wife. So now you return to work, back to the PLM project. How do you feel about it all now?
Yeah. As a change maker and always paying attention to what people think and what people want, now I'm more connected to also what people want and not right putting what people needs exactly, but sometimes what they want is what survives, right? And maybe helping them to get that in the same situation. Like we say, and I remember you saying about that, PLM is not a digital tool. PLM is something that exists if a product exists.
Yeah.
So you need to make this life to going on. So what changed to me is the approach, right? Is to get what they want and show how it is, not talking too much about the tools, but thinking more about what they can get from a process, a better process to get that done. And suddenly I before that I was more trying to give the solutions because I knew that solution would help them, and they sometimes deny it. They ask it for, and then they don't receive that. I say, what is happening? Why this happening? And now I am just listening to them, and then they started to ask for things more efficiently. So they are seeing that they are part of it, and they are starting to put their requirements in a clearly way. So I think this is their mindset changing. I can see that. And I started to work more with the mindsets than with the tool. Exactly. I think it's what changed it. Yes.
And it's so interesting. And it is much more interesting for everybody when they realize that that mindset change is the difference between success and failure. It isn't the technology. It isn't that we've come up with a new idea. It is that everybody is starting to see things clearly. And that,
Yeah.
and you have said several times in our chat today that when they start to see things clearly, they start to make sense. And when
Yeah.
something makes sense, then everybody's happy.
Yeah, you can think about the phones, right? A simple example, right? We didn't use these mobile phones all the time like we use today. And certainly if at some point in the past they put a phone in our front, we would say, I don't want that. I don't want to have everything in my hand all the time. This is not making sense, right? But the mindset was changed before the phone come, right? It's it's an idea of having a communication. And I remember that there was a phrase in the mobile propaganda. They said, making people connected, closer, not connected, closer. And I said, well, it is. And then I was in a class, in a history class, and the teacher said, people were starting to make calls, because we at the time we just used the phone to make calls. And then the people, they said, are you sure this is when the girl respond the phone and get out of the class to answer the phone, he stopped the class and said, this is not make people closer, because she left the room. So she disconnected from the whole class because of her phone rang, right? This is the image of what they were selling. They were changing our minds, saying that this would connect us. And this is the same thing till today, right? Use your phone to connect, but actually you are maybe disconnecting, being more far from your group, from people. But it's a strong mindset, connecting, right? And then change came, right? Like something that we cannot live without anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The technology is good. I'm not saying the contrary, right? It's good. But just to give the example of changing the minds, and then the technology comes, right?
It's so interesting that you give that example, because you're again just reminding us that sometimes our minds need that messaging first before we actually get something. Because if we are convinced in the messaging, then our expectations are ready to accept the change. Then,
Yeah.
of course, when we have it, if it doesn't deliver, like the teacher in your class was pointing out, hang on a minute, are we really connecting or disconnecting here? Then that becomes a different set of questions. But we are questioning after acceptance, aren't we?
Yes.
And in the process of change, especially technology change in the workplace, getting that initial acceptance is the most important part.
Exactly. Understand the need and what can make sense in our heads. What makes sense, right? And it's not the example of the cell phone makes not us to go away, right? Is another decision. You need to make you are still humans. So technology is not to take your uh, uh, I don't know, free will of take a decision, right? But use that in your favor, right? To use that for the best. Every time you have a technology, you have the option of using this right or not, using this for the better, even with PLM, right? And or cell phones or any technology, right? Today we are missing on using technology, and the result is lies to the beginning of our conversation in politicians and everything. But we need to start also think about how to use technologies for the best. All technologies, all the changes. We need to think about, use our minds also to revert bad usage of technology. But yes, the change comes, the change for the technology comes, and the change for the technology, good practice and bad usage, and the limits we put this in our lives or not. It's all about changes, right?
Yeah.
All about think first, then change,
Yeah.
right?
And so what's next for you, Susana? What's next for you as the change maker?
Yeah, now I am preparing map, right, for our business. And right, I am closing 1 year. In the next month, I will be 1 year mom, right? I'm just beginning with that initiative. So I am organizing more my initiatives because they are many. And I want to not take lost this control of so many changes coming. So everybody that is a change maker needs to organize their lives to make the change as well. Otherwise, you would keep pick up in things to do changes and nothing will real happen. So now I'm taking more attention to a child, 1 year and a half. Until 3 years, I know I need to be his guidance, right? So I need to give time to that. But also, I have a husband with an incredible participation in everything we do together. So I count with him to not have a, woman and man division, like we are not a regular we don't have this pattern, right, in marriage where woman stay at home, look for the baby, and dad goes on. The opposite is happening right now, the opposite, and this can change it next year. But now we are focusing organize our lives, right? And Felipe, my husband, is also finishing his doctorate in history. He studies pre-colonial Brazil history. So it's a quite important publication he'll do after that. And helping us understanding where we are coming from, right? Where this Brazilian culture, history starts, right? And this is all part of our lives too, and the decisions we make. So yes, at work, things are moving, maps are being created, people are more participative, but we still have a long run to go. World is changing, so we will need more efficient energy. We need to be more sustainable. This is not rely only in technology. This rely on people, culture. So I'm always looking at it like a climate change started in the research in the beginning of my career. So I am always looking to that as well, how we impact the environment we live. We double sized it in the last 50 years with 8 billion people in the world. So this is too challenge to not having us killing us, right? We need to live in the best way we can. So I'm always looking at this direction, right? So we can have a future, a successful future in human, right?
Amazing. And then I think at some point, hopefully you'll get to advise Lula on he is openly supporting financially the people. What I think the last numbers I saw, 30 million people in Brazil in hardship positions living in real poverty. And they, of course, need to protect the rainforest, which rightly or wrongly now is you know, the Brazilian rainforest being called the lungs of the world, and lots, you know, that lots of controversy over that. And of course the fact that Brazil is such a young country, and of course will do some amazing things, and needing to learn from its indigenous history is also part of Lula's agenda. So I'm sure both you and Philippe have an important role to play in what's coming along, as well as nurturing Danny the way that you will both do, which I'm sure will be excellent. It has been absolutely amazing listening to you today, Susana, and I'm sure everybody listening to this will have got such a lot out of this conversation. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Nina. Sorry if I speak too much, right? I have many things that we could do, maybe 10 podcasts about changes. I love to talk about it.
And we can do more. There is no problem with that.
Anyway, thank you very much. This is always good to be with you, hear from you as well. Hope to talk to you soon again and see you soon.
Yes, hope to see you soon. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was great. Great.